What if your body was already warning you that your blood sugar was out of control, and you were ignoring those signs every day? This question may seem uncomfortable, but it's more real than many people imagine. Because, before any test shows a problem, the body speaks. It sends subtle, repeated, silent alerts. And the real danger is not in feeling an isolated symptom, but in getting used to them to the point of thinking that all of this is normal. Constante fatigue hours, difficulty concentrating, mood swings, excessive thirst. Have you ever experienced this? How many times have you attributed these signs to stress, age, a busy routine, or a bad night's sleep? The truth is that many of the main signs of unregulated blood sugar are easily confused with everyday things. And that's exactly why so many people live for years with out-of-control glucose without realizing it. If you have diabetes, prediabetes, a family history, or are simply concerned about your health, stay with me until the end of this video. What you're about to discover might surprise you not, because these signs are rare, but precisely because they're too common. And when something becomes common, we stop questioning it. The body starts screaming silently, while the mind learns to ignore it. There's a very dangerous idea that blood sugar problems arise suddenly, as if one day everything is fine and the next, everything is out of control. But the reality is quite different. Blood sugar imbalance is almost always a gradual process. It builds up from small imbalances, repeated habits, sleepless nights, automatic decisions, and signs that are ignored. And the sooner you recognize these signs, the greater your power to act. Maybe you're here because you feel something isn't right, but you don't know exactly what it is. Or because you've heard a lot about diabetes, but believe that this isn't your case yet. Or maybe because you want to prevent it. Understand your own body better, and not wait for a bigger problem to appear before taking action. Whatever the reason, this video exists to bring clarity, not to scare you, but to open your eyes. Throughout this content, we'll talk about the 10 main signs that your blood sugar may be out of control. Physical, emotional, and mental signs that many people ignore for years, thinking they're just part of life. And the more you understand these warnings, the easier it becomes to make conscious decisions in your daily life. Because health doesn't begin with fear. Health begins with information. And let me tell you something important. Noticing one sign doesn't mean a diagnosis, but ignoring several of them for too long can be costly. The body is extremely intelligent. It always tries to adapt before collapsing. The question is, are you listening? While you watch, try to observe yourself without judgment. Just acknowledge. Some things may make a lot of sense to you. Others perhaps not so much, and that's okay. This is a process of awareness, not guilt. The goal here is to help you better understand what your body has been trying to communicate for some time. And that's precisely why these signals are so often ignored. Because they look too much like what we've learned to call normal. Tiredness becomes routine. Stress becomes an excuse. Lack of focus becomes blame for age or the rush of daily life. The problem isn't feeling these signals. The problem is normalizing them. It's waking up tired every day and thinking it's part of life. It's feeling hungry all the time and believing it's just anxiety. When this happens, the body keeps warning us. But we stop listening. Maybe, while you're listening to all this, Something is already making sense inside. Maybe you're remembering recent situations, conversations, moments when you thought, this isn't normal. But we end up thinking it is, if this made sense to you. Comment here what you remembered so far. It could be something you feel in your daily life, or a question that came up. When you share your experience, you help other people recognize themselves too. And this creates a space for exchange that goes far beyond a video. And if you feel that this content is bringing clarity, liking the video is a simple way to support this type of conversation. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people who need this information but don't yet know where to start. And if you want to continue learning, understanding yourself, and taking care of your health more consciously, subscribing to the channel is a natural way to follow along on this journey. Here, the idea is to inform, support, and guide, always respecting your pace. This video is especially important for those who have diabetes, prediabetes, a family history, or simply want to prevent metabolic problems before they become something bigger. But, in fact, it's also for those who feel that their body is acting strange, out of balance, and want to better understand what is happening. Because paying attention early is an act of care, not fear. The human body is intelligent. It doesn't fail out of nowhere. Before anything worse happens, it lights up warning lights, like a car's dashboard. First it's a discrete light, then another. And if nothing changes, the alerts become more intense. Ignoring these signals doesn't make them disappear. It only postpones the moment to act. When you learn to recognize these warnings, you got your choice, and you gain power over your own health. Now, with that in mind, it makes sense to look more closely at these signs that so many people ignore, because some of them appear much earlier than you imagine. And understanding the first one completely changes how you see all the others. Now, I want to delve deeper into this subject, because the first sign is usually the one that almost everyone ignores for the longest time. Constante fatigue, even after a full night's sleep. It's not that occasional laziness or tiredness after a difficult day. It's a different, persistent exhaustion that makes you wake up already feeling tired, as if your body hasn't recovered. And here's a truth that completely changes how you look at this. Often, this fatigue isn't related to willpower, age, or a heavy routine. It's linked to the body's difficulty in using glucose efficiently. When blood sugar is unregulated, glucose may be circulating, but it's not entering the cells correctly to become energy. The result is a body that is fueled, but unable to use that fuel properly. It's like having a full tank and yet the car doesn't perform well. This generates a feeling of heaviness, sluggishness, lack of energy, and even discouragement. Gradually, this shapes a dangerous mindset in which the person begins to define themselves as someone who is naturally tired, when, in fact, the body is trying to warn that something is out of balance. This signal, when ignored, impacts daily decisions, productivity, mood, and even how the person sees themselves. And then, almost as a direct consequence of this fatigue, the second signal appears: excessive hunger or hunger at odd hours. It's not that natural hunger that appears after a few hours without eating. It's an urgent, intense hunger that arises shortly after meals or at completely random times. This happens because, when blood sugar rises quickly and then drops sharply, the body goes into a state of alert. It interprets this drop as a risk and triggers hunger. Signals to try to correct the imbalance as quickly as possible. This constant rise and fall of glucose creates a silent and exhausting cycle. The person eats, feels momentary relief, but soon after, hunger returns, sometimes even stronger. Over time, this affects food choices, increases cravings for carbohydrates and sweets, and generates a feeling of loss of control. And the most subtle thing of all is that many people believe this is just anxiety, lack of discipline, or food addiction, when in fact it's the body reacting to spikes and drops in blood sugar. This cycle has a huge impact on the health journey because it undermines a person's self-confidence and makes any attempt at consistent change difficult. Behind the scenes of this process, the body is trying to balance itself. It doesn't do this to sabotage you, but to survive. The problem begins when this pattern repeats itself and becomes seen as normal. Constant hunger ceases to be questioned, becomes routine, and another warning sign is silenced. Small revelations like this help too. Understand that many behaviors are not personal failings, but biological responses to a system that is dysregulated. And then we come to the third sign, perhaps one of the best known, but still often underestimated: frequent thirst and dry mouth. This is one of the classic signs of out-of-control blood sugar, and it doesn't appear by chance. When glucose is too high in the blood, the body tries to protect itself by eliminating this excess through urine. To do this, it needs more fluid. The result is constant thirst, which doesn't seem to be fully quenched, in addition to the sensation of a dry mouth, even when drinking water frequently. This sign is important because it shows the body entering compensation mode. It is working harder than it should to try to correct an internal imbalance. Many people increase their fluid intake, but don't ask themselves why this thirst never seems enough. Once again, the symptom is treated in isolation, without looking at the root of the problem. Over time, this constant adaptation generates wear and tear and increases the impact of glycemic imbalance in other areas of the body. When you start connecting these signs, fatigue that doesn't go away, hunger that doesn't respect schedules, and thirst that never fully resolves, you realize that they are not isolated events. They are part of the same context, of the same silent pattern that gradually forms. Understanding this changes your mindset because it removes the weight of guilt and focuses on awareness. It's not about pointing out mistakes, but about seeing what the body has been trying to communicate for a long time. These initial signs are usually the most ignored precisely because they allow for adaptation. The person continues living, adjusting here and there, without realizing the accumulated impact of these sensations in the long term. But when you start to recognize them, something changes internally. A new clarity emerges, a feeling that perhaps it's time to look more closely at these warnings and understand what they really mean within your own journey. And as this awareness grows, other signs begin to make sense as well. Some are even more subtle, others directly affect emotions, focus, and behavior. Now, with this deeper understanding, it becomes easier to see why certain signs appear even before any diagnosis, and why ignoring them can cost more than it seems. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we talk about the next signs, we enter an area that directly affects behavior, decisions, and even how a person sees themselves on a daily basis. The fourth sign is usually one of the most frustrating: the intense craving for sugar or carbohydrates. The kind that appears out of nowhere and seems impossible to ignore. It's not simply a matter of taste or lack of control. Most of the time, this is the body trying to survive an imbalance. When blood sugar rises rapidly and then drops sharply, the brain goes on alert. It interprets this drop as a threat and demands the fastest possible source of energy. And what is the shortest path? Sugar and simple carbohydrates. This is how a silent cycle of dependence is created. The person eats something sweet, feels momentary relief, a brief feeling of well-being. But a short time later, the craving returns, sometimes even stronger. This is not weakness. It's physiology. It's the body reacting to fluctuations in blood sugar. Over time, this cycle begins to impact mindset. People start to blame themselves, thinking they lack discipline, that they always slip up, when in reality they are trapped in a self-reinforcing biological pattern. This is one of the most important hidden truths to understand because it completely changes the relationship with food. It's not just about what you eat, but the internal context in which these decisions are being made. Ignoring this keeps the cycle active. Recognizing this opens up space for transformation. Soon after, a sign emerges that tends to be a little more frightening, but that many people try to minimize: blurred or fluctuating vision. Sometimes it's something quick, fleeting. At other times, it seems that the vision becomes blurry, as if there is difficulty focusing. Many people attribute this to tiredness, excessive screen time, or age. But when blood sugar is unregulated, these visual changes are not random. What happens is that rapid variations in blood glucose affect the fluid balance within the eye, especially in the lens. This can temporarily alter how light is focused, generating this sensation of blurred or unstable vision. There's no need to panic, but it shouldn't be ignored either. This sign shows that the impact of glycemic dysregulation is already going beyond internal sensation and beginning to affect sensory functions. It's the body saying, more clearly, that something needs attention. The danger here lies in normalizing once again. The person blinks, strains their eyes, waits for it to pass, and it dies. But the pattern remains. And every time this sign appears and is ignored, the body learns that it needs to adapt on its own. This constant adaptation takes its toll along the way, even if at the beginning everything seems under control. And then we come to the sixth sign, which many people describe as a feeling of living on autopilot. Difficulty concentrating. The so-called brain fog. This is when reasoning seems slower. Memory fails, and focus easily slips away. The person forgets words, loses the thread of the conversation, and has difficulty organizing simple thoughts. At work, this affects performance. At home, it affects patience and presence. And yet, it's common to hear, it must be stress. The truth is that the brain depends on a stable supply of energy to function well. When blood sugar rises and falls erratically, the brain feels it. It doesn't receive glucose consistently, and this is directly reflected in mental clarity. This fog is not a lack of intelligence or disinterest. It's a sign that the body is dealing with an internal imbalance that impacts basic cognitive functions. The most interesting thing is to realize how these signs connect behind the scenes. The craving for sugar, the fluctuating vision, the difficulty focusing. They are all part of the same context. They don't appear in isolation. They tell a story of a body trying to compensate, adjust, survive repeated decisions, and a system that has lost stability. When you start to see this as a whole, something changes. Guilt gives way to understanding, and understanding opens up space for more conscious choices. These signs also directly influence emotions and behavior. A tired mind makes worse decisions. An unbalanced body seeks shortcuts. And so, without realizing it, the person enters a cycle that reinforces itself over time. Breaking this cycle begins with awareness, with seeing the pattern, with understanding that these warnings are neither random nor exaggerated. As you recognize these signs in yourself or someone close to you, it becomes clearer that the body is not failing. It is trying to communicate, and the sooner this message is understood, the smaller the accumulated impact later on. This perception is part of a larger journey, a change of mindset that doesn't happen all at once, but begins with small revelations like these. And when this clarity begins to form, other signs, even deeper and sometimes more emotional, also begin to make sense. Some of them directly affect mood, sleep, and even how a person reacts to everyday situations. Understanding this is an important step in seeing the complete picture and realizing that the body always gives clues before something more serious happens. If any part of this resonated with you, comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because from here the signs begin to touch even more sensitive areas of life. Emotions, sleep, body recovery, and even the relationship with one's own reflection. The seventh sign is often confused with personality or difficult phase, but it has a direct link to blood sugar, irritability, and mood swings. When blood glucose fluctuates, the brain feels it immediately. Emotions become more intense, patience decreases, and small situations take on larger proportions than they should. It is no exaggeration to say that blood sugar influences behavior. Sudden drops in glucose can generate anxiety, nervousness, and even a feeling of emptiness or sadness for no clear reason. High peaks, on the other hand, can make a person more agitated, impatient, and have difficulty dealing with simple frustrations. Gradually, this impacts relationships, decisions, and how the person reacts to the world. Often, those experiencing this begin to believe that it has become more difficult to live with, when in fact the body is fighting to maintain internal balance. This is an important revelation because it removes the weight of judgment and brings understanding to something that seemed purely emotional. Soon after, a sign appears that directly affects the recovery of the body and mind. Poor sleep or waking up tired, even after several hours in bed. Here, there is a little discussed background. During the night, the body should enter a state of deep repair. But when nighttime blood sugar is unregulated, this does not happen ideally. Sugar spikes can activate alert mechanisms, increasing the release of cortisol, the stress hormone, precisely when the body should be relaxing. The result is fragmented, superficial sleep that does not restore. The person wakes up already tired, with a feeling of heaviness in the body and mind. Sometimes they don't even realize they woke up several times during the night. This pattern accumulates and creates a dangerous cycle. Poor sleep worsens blood sugar control, and unregulated sugar worsens sleep even more. Over time, this affects energy, mood, focus, and even the motivation to take care of one's own health. The journey becomes more difficult not because of a lack of willpower, but because the body is never fully recovered. And when the body cannot recover well during sleep, other signs begin to appear. One of them is more serious and is often ignored until it becomes evident. Frequent infections or slow healing. Small cuts that take a long time to close. Infections that easily return, persistent inflammation. This happens because high blood sugar levels compromise the functioning of the immune system and hinder natural repair processes. The body loses efficiency. It tries to respond, but it can't do so with the same speed and precision. This sign is important because it shows that the impact of glycemic imbalance is already affecting the basic capacity for defense and regeneration. It's not something to be afraid of, but it's a clear warning. When the body starts to take longer to recover, it's a sign that internal resources are being used to compensate for constant imbalances instead of promoting health and protection. And then we come to the 10th sign, which is usually one of the most emotionally frustrating. Unexplained weight gain or extreme difficulty losing weight, even with effort. Here, the role of insulin comes in simply and directly. When blood sugar is frequently high, the body releases more insulin to try to control this glucose. In addition to regulating sugar, insulin also signals energy storage. In excess, it favors the accumulation of fat and makes it difficult to use this fat as an energy source. This creates a feeling of injustice. The person makes an effort, tries to change habits, but the body doesn't seem to respond. This blockage is not a lack of discipline. It's metabolism working in defense mode. The body believes it needs to store, not release. And as long as this internal message doesn't change, losing weight becomes a constant struggle. Understanding this completely changes your mindset, because it shows that the problem isn't just how much you eat, but how your body is interpreting those choices. When you put all these signs together, emotional, physical, mental, unmolecularlize the real impact of uncontrolled blood sugar. They tell the story of a body trying to maintain balance amidst repeated decisions, accelerated routines, and a lack of awareness of its own signals. None of this happens overnight. It's a silent process, built little by little, behind the scenes of everyday life. Recognizing these signs isn't about immediate diagnosis, but about awareness. It's about realizing that the body always warns before something more serious happens. Each sign is an opportunity for adjustment, for a change of course, for transformation in the way you take care of yourself. And when this awareness deepens, it becomes easier to understand why certain habits, patterns, and choices have such a large impact in the long term. As this clarity sets in, the most important question of all naturally arises. What can be done to interrupt this cycle and restore stability to the body? This answer begins to take shape when we understand not only the signs, but the complete context behind them. If you've made it this far, it already shows that you're truly attentive to your health and different from 95% of people who go through life ignoring important body signals. That in itself is a huge step. If you've noticed any of these signs in your daily life, comment below something like "I'm with you until the end." It will be amazing to see who is living this same journey of awareness and care. And if you felt that this video brought clarity about the impact of blood sugar and the signs that we often ignore, Leave your like. It's a simple way to show that this message made sense to you. In addition to strengthening the community that is learning together about diabetes, blood sugar, and metabolic health in a practical way. And if you want to continue understanding how small actions can transform your routine and prevent more serious problems, subscribe to the channel to follow content that really helps you make smart decisions every day. Information is the first step to control and prevention. And here, we are building this journey together. There's a video over here that complements this topic. Click on it and continue reading, because there's still a lot of valuable information to discover about how to take care of your body consciously and strategically.